Today, I'm going to reveal one of history's darkest secrets. The Vikings were not only ruthless warriors, but also brutal players in the human trade. And among their cruelest businesses was one that most people have never heard of, the trade of castrated slaves. This story shows that sometimes survival itself could be the greatest curse. In the 9th and 10th centuries, the Vikings were not only feared warriors of the North, they had also built a vast slave trade network. Within this network, Slavic youths captured from Eastern Europe were highly valuable. These young captives were dragged in chains to Scandinavian ports, from where they were sold to Arab merchants. Historians write that some of these slaves were castrated to be sold at a higher price. In the Islamic world, in the Byzantine court, and in wealthy households, castrated men, known as eunuchs, were in great demand. The most terrifying part of this story was the castration process. Young boys, bound in chains, were taken to specially established castration workshops. These were dark chambers filled with crude tools, blood-stained tables, and walls echoing with the screams of children. Here, brutal operations were carried out. There was no anesthesia, no real medical knowledge. Small bodies writhed in unbearable pain, and most died from infection or blood loss. The historian Ibn Fadlan, writing in the 10th century, recorded what he saw. They capture Slavic boys, castrate them, and then sell them in caravans, covered in blood. Those who survived became something more dreadful. They were no longer seen as human, but as valuable commodities. These eunuchs were prized in Byzantine palaces, among wealthy Arab elites, and in the courts of sultans. To them, these boys were worth more than gold, because they symbolized both power and status. This tragedy remains one of history's darkest trades, and every breath of the survivors stands as proof of how cruel humanity can be. The surviving youths would never be able to form their own families or have children. They were used as servants in their owners' households, attendants in palaces, or guards protecting harems. For many, life consisted of monotonous slavery. The same rooms, the same orders, the same chains every day. Some, however, gained significant power and influence. For example, a eunuch named Eutropius in Byzantium became one of the empire's top advisors, shaping palace politics. But for most, life was cruel. They had lost their identities, their manhood, their families, their freedom, their dreams, and even their childhoods were gone. Some learned to see their own plight through the eyes of others. While serving in palaces, households, or harem guard duties, they witnessed displays of power and status, understanding that their own value was measured only by the interests of others. This tragedy revealed, both individually and historically, the darkest corners of the human spirit. This horrific trade brought immense wealth to the Vikings. A castrated slave was 3 or even 4 times more valuable than an ordinary slave because they held a special physical status and were in high demand. In the Arab world, these youths were exchanged for gold, sold in major cities, and in Byzantium, they were employed in the most trusted positions in palaces. The suffering of these children added to the wealth of Viking chiefs in the north, strengthening them both economically and politically. Historians emphasize the cruelty of this system. The life of one child was sacrificed solely to enrich a few Vikings or merchants. Every tragedy meant profit. Every lost child left behind grief and fear. This dark trade not only destroyed individual lives, but also tested the conscience of an entire society. But the true tragedy, often unrecorded, was the fear and helplessness those young ones endured. Their screams, their cries, their lost lives. History books often speak of gold and power, but blood and tears are mostly ignored. Imagine a 12-year-old child, ripped from their village, chained, and thrown into an unknown future. With every step, they are slowly distanced from family and the world they knew. During their journey through forests or towns, fear and hunger are constant companions. Then they are laid on a bloody operating table. Every breath is filled with pain and terror. The primitive tools used in the procedure cause infection, blood loss, and immense suffering. If they survive, they live the rest of their lives as a shadow, stripped of freedom, family, and identity. Every glance, every move, haunted by the memories of what was lost. But most did not survive. They became one among the thousands buried, a silent tragedy that no one would remember. These losses represented not only physical destruction, but psychological devastation. The survivors lost their identity and future, while the conscience of society itself was being tested. Every death was a nightmare for those left behind, a warning to society, how humanity could be destroyed for the sake of power and wealth. This dark story is not just a part of history. It is a mirror thrown into the conscience of mankind. Today, Vikings are portrayed in popular culture as fearless warrior heroes. TV shows, films, and games highlight their bravery and conquests. But often, the dark side, the pain and cruelty behind the scenes, is completely ignored. Castrated slaves were the invisible victims of history. Without them, Vikings could not have grown so wealthy or built such massive trade networks. Taken at a young age, chained, and brutally castrated, the survivors lost their freedom, identity, and families forever. These slaves worked in palaces and wealthy households, increasing the Vikings' wealth enormously. Yet, their names are absent from history. They vanished silently, unremembered. Each one stands as a reminder of how humanity can be ignored in the pursuit of power and riches. Remembering their story today is crucial to acknowledging the dark sides of the past and never forgetting the painful truths of human history. Silent heroes, lost in the shadows of time, still echo the suffering and lessons they left behind. Imagine for a moment, dying on the battlefield might have been more honorable than what they endured. For the living were, in a sense, already dead, their freedom, identity, and childhood stripped away. Beneath the gold-laden ships of the Vikings lay not just wealth, but the blood and suffering of thousands of innocent children. This dark trade remains one of history's most overlooked and forgotten tragedies. Each child sacrificed for power and riches vanished silently into history. This story sheds light not only on the Vikings, but also on the darkest sides of humanity. If this story shocked you, subscribe to the channel to not miss the real historical tales we will reveal next, because the darkest secrets of history are still waiting to be told.